Aloha Kahookahi Kalepa.
Aloha. Mamai.
Mahalo ya oi me kawahana apau.
Mahalo.
Mahalo nui.
Mahalo.
Okay, in your written testimony in the final paragraph of page 1, you state that, and I quote, "Seafaring is but one of the many examples that illustrate my ancestors." In the final paragraph of page 1 of your written testimony, you state that seafaring is but one of the many examples that illustrate my ancestors' wisdom to adapt and use their knowledge and resources to survive. Is this correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you move on in your testimony to talk about the quarrying of rock on Mauna Kea as well.
Yes, I do.
And when you're talking about this quarrying of rock on Mauna Kea, would you consider this to be perhaps one of the many examples that you referred to in your previous statement?
One, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
not the only one, but one of many. Mahalo. On page 2 of your written testimony, let's see. The second paragraph. As explorers, Hawaiians utilized island resources to sustain their communities. The slopes of Mauna Kea contain a record of how, for generations, a very adaptive and intelligent people utilized the mountain as a vital resource. They excavated the thin-arid slopes of Mauna Kea for high-quality, durable stone to produce the best set of Neolithic tools in the Pacific. Pololi.
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you say they, who are you referring to?
Speaking about Native Hawaiians.
Native Hawaiians. Americans?
No.
Canadians?
Nope.
Indians?
No.
Japanese?
No.
Chinese?
No.
Okay. So how would these Hawaiians excavate the land? And what I mean by that, I guess, is what tool or tools would they use?
Yeah, that's interesting. They'd probably use rock on rock to wedge between chunks of larger stones and then break it off, and then probably some kind of rubbing tools to rough manufacture the stone, adds it down to a usable size for transporting to lower elevations.
And if the TMT were to be built, would similar tools be used to excavate the land?
No.
What type of tools would be used for the excavation needed to build the TMT?
I'm not a construction expert, but I would assume cranes and graders. Again, I'm not a construction expert. So,
would you say that it's a drastic there's a drastic difference between the tools that would have been used for excavating land or for quarrying rock than the tools that would be used to excavate for the TMT?
Yes, absolutely.
Why did Kanaka, meaning Hawaiians, why did Kanaka excavate land at these quarry areas?
You're talking about Keanakekoi in particular?
Yes, we can talk about that. Keanakekoi. So this would be one of the areas where Hawaiians excavated land.
Yes, Keanakekoi is one of the areas where they excavated land.
Okay, and why did they do this excavation?
That's again, it calls for me to speculate, but our kupuna ancestors were highly investigated. You know, once they arrived here in Hawaii, they looked at all the abundant resources available to them. I don't know what drove them up to the upper slopes of Mauna Kea to quarry this stone, but this stone is because the lava came through the glacial ice cap. It cooled relatively quickly, and it produced this extra durable, very hard stone. So I'm in amazement that they went to that elevation, noticed that there was this kind of stone, and then began the manufacture and the collection of stone to produce adzes.
When excavating, and again, I'm just using the word excavate, so that's the word that you use in your testimony.
Yeah.
When excavating, how deep below the surface would Hawaiians excavate?
Oh, it was all, you're talking about gathering the stones. It was all surface. In other words, you could see the rock on the face cliffs, or it was above ground.
Okay,
So-
mahalo. Are you familiar with, are you aware of how deep the TMT would need to excavate if it were to be built?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you talked about the quarrying of this land, Kianakako'i, for rock. Yeah, for a certain type of rock, a special rock. What was this rock used for?
Well, it was manufactured for the creation of adzes, and adzes was used in all kinds of different utilitarian work that governed the daily life of Hawaiians.
Mahalo. Adze, that'd be ko'i. Yeah?
Ko'i, yeah.
Okay. I know you just did. I want to ask you if you can, if you could expand a little bit more on what ko'i were used for.
Well, ko'i was used for utilitarian work, so construction of houses, construction of idols, canoe building. So anything that required wood to be shaped, you would use a stone adze to rough shape it, even finish shaping.
Would you say that the things that the ko'i was used for, that these things were necessary for survival?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And therefore, is it fair to say that the ko'i was perhaps one of the most important tools in traditional Hawaiian society?
In both traditional Hawaiian society and in both South Pacific society as well.
Okay, mahalo. Some would even say perhaps that in a certain perspective, it was maybe the most important tool in society.
It was the most important tool in the indigenous toolkit.
Mahalo. If there were no ko'i in traditional Hawaiian society, would it be safe to say that people of that time would lose their ability to have shelter, food, transportation, and sustainability of livelihood?
They would be greatly hampered in the production of or manufacture of anything that that was required wood to be shaped.
Is the TMT one of the most important tools in modern Hawaiian society? Would it be if it were to be built?
Can you just repeat the question one more time?
If the TMT were to be built,
Yes.
would it be, like the ko'i, one of the most important tools in a modern Hawaiian society?
So it would require me to understand what Hawaiian society. How do you
This
define?
day and age for the Hawaiian community at large.
It's an important tool for modern Hawaiian society.
If the TMT were not to be built on Mauna Kea, would it be safe to say that people would lose their ability to have shelter, food, transportation, and sustainability of livelihood?
No.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to lele aku. I'll ikolu page 3 of your written testimony. And you state, let me find it. The first paragraph at the top, beginning at the first sentence, first full sentence. As a Hawaiian, I recognize that I am a descendant of some of the best naked-eye astronomers the world has ever known. It is culturally consistent to advocate for Hawaiian participation.
Excuse me. When we read, we tend to
Too
read
fast?
faster. So when you read, if you could read a little slower, that would help.
Kalomai. It is culturally consistent to advocate for Hawaiian participation in a field of science that continues to enable that tradition and a field of work in which we ought to lead. Polole.
Correct.
Okay. So how would the world's largest telescope, which I've heard TMT claim itself to be, continue to enable the tradition of Hawaiians being the greatest naked-eye astronomers the world has ever known?
Well, we have requires some explanation. We have several native Hawaiian astronomers, and this is not in the scientific sense of the word and not the traditional sense of astronomers. So I would assume that they would be able to use the telescope to further their research.
And this would impact Hawaiians' ability to continue to be the world's greatest naked eye astronomers?
Well, yes, in that they need to use their eyes to see stuff, but yes, it would do a lot to maintain that we are some of the best astronomers in the world.
Okay. But not specifically naked eye astronomers.
Yeah, I use naked eye to mean in the natural sense.
Okay, so again, going back to the statement saying that it is culturally consistent to advocate for Hawaiian participation in a field of science, and it continues on, the same statement I just read. In the history, I guess, of telescopes on Mauna Kea, and I'll get to the TMT question specifically, but just in the history of telescopes being on top of Mauna Kea, what legitimate participation have Hawaiians had in this field of science other than the giving of their sacred mauna for desecration in the name of astronomy and giant telescopes?
You really need to slow down.
What legitimate participation have Hawaiians had in this field of science through telescopes being on Mauna Kea other than the giving of their sacred mauna for desecration in the name of astronomy and giant telescopes?
Can you just repeat that? Here. It's a long question.
Very long question. Let me get to where
The witness has requested that the court reporter read back the question. Go ahead, please.
I'm just trying to find where he started it. In the history of telescopes on top of Mauna Kea, what is the participation of Hawaiians have in this field of science other than the giving of the he started again. What significant participation have Hawaiians had in this field of science through telescopes being on Mauna Kea other than the giving of their sacred mauna for desecration in the name of astronomy and giant telescopes?
Can I go ahead and say that again, because that's not what I have written on my paper.
I'm sorry?
That's not exactly what I have written on my paper, so can I go ahead and try and say it one more time? Ask the question one more time?
Yes, but if you can ask it slowly, then we...
I try my best.
I know you
Okay.
are. But we want to really be sure that we get everything accurately.
Hikino.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. What legitimate participation have Hawaiians had in this field of science through telescopes being on Mauna Kea other than the giving of their sacred mauna for desecration in the name of astronomy and giant telescopes?
So the question is what legitimate?
Participation.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Other than giving the mauna.
Well, I know of an astronomer, Dr. Paul Coleman, who's conducted research. So that's a Hawaiian contributing to the field of astronomy.
Are you aware of any other Hawaiians?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So it's fair to say that less than 0.0001% of the Hawaiian population has had direct participation in science on Mauna Kea since it began with telescopes.
That's not true.
You just know of that only one.
Because participation in the telescopes doesn't require that someone directly be an observer. It means that they can process information, analyze the information. They can work as technicians. So I'm not exactly sure that that's a true statement that less than 0.0001 actually participates in the science of astronomy.
Okay. Should Hawaiian participation compromise and ultimately trump Hawaiian culture and practices?
Absolutely not. They should be able to collaborate.
Okay, page 3 of the written testimony. You state, I firmly believe that the highest level of desecration rests in actions that remove the opportunity and choices from the kind of future our youth can own. Pololi.
Correct. Excuse me, correct.
Yeah. Okay, so in my reading of this quote, I'm considering the word. Okay. I firmly believe that the highest level of desecration rests in the actions that remove the opportunity and choices from the kind of future our youth can own. Are you considering the TMT to be one of these opportunities?
I'm considering the TMT and all other research conducted. Yeah. Yes. So.
Okay. Now, so your use of this phrase, highest level of desecration, to me implies a comparison, and I can stand to be corrected. But are you ultimately saying that the building of the TMT on Mauna Kea would in fact be desecration, but that not building the TMT on Mauna Kea would actually be a higher level of desecration?
I don't understand the question, so.
Okay, I'll try it one more time. Okay, I'm really trying. Okay, your use of the phrase highest level of desecration, to me, when reading it, implies a comparison. And so my question is, are you ultimately saying in your written testimony, or I guess interpreting that that building the TMT on Mauna Kea would in fact be desecration, but that not building the TMT on Mauna Kea would just be a higher level of desecration?
I'm object, vague and ambiguous.
Sir, do you understand the question?
Well, I think there's two questions.
Are there two questions here, Mr. Kanuha?
No, I guess maybe maybe an assumption and then a question. Or not an assumption, but an interpretation that I'm asking for clarification on, and then...
Well, I think you need to break up your questions, please.
Okay, I guess, okay.
I mean, if the witness thinks there are two
I get
questions...
it, I understand. Okay, so again, the use of the phrase highest level of desecration to me implies a comparison. So are you comparing this to something? To maybe perhaps lower levels
let
of
him
desecration?
answer. Let him answer. Go ahead.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that the building of... No, we'll get there. Strike that. How would you define desecration, I guess, in the terms of which you use that word in your written testimony?
So, in my own interpretation of desecration, I believe that when the word is used to desecrate, it's used rather liberally to imply that, again, this is my own interpretation, that something that's been there historically, it's a man-made structure from prehistory, pre-contact, that's established and recorded, is purposefully removed. So that's one interpretation that I have.
Hikino, mahalo. Would you agree, and I use this term generally, so I guess you can let me know if I need to be a little bit more specific, but would you agree that in a Hawaiian cultural perspective, Mauna Kea is considered a public monument or structure? And just as a side note, I know that that language wouldn't line up with the cultural way of defining that, but I guess taking that cultural perspective and bringing it into a modern context, would you think that the cultural perspective of Mauna Kea is that it's a public monument or structure?
No, I believe that it's a cultural treasure.
Cultural treasure, okay, that works as well. Would you agree that Mauna Kea is a place of worship and or burial?
Yes, I do agree.
Okay. And again, through this general Hawaiian cultural perspective, would you agree that Mauna Kea is considered an object of veneration?
Absolutely.
Mahalo. If the TMT were to be built in its proposed site, would the construction damage the landscape of Mauna Kea?
It would change the landscape of Mauna Kea.
Yeah, so would it deface it?
I don't believe so.
Would it disfigure it?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe that the building or placement of TMT on Mauna Kea would in any way, shape, or form either deface, damage, disfigure, or mar the landscape?
No, I don't believe so.
Would you say that's true for the rest of the telescopes built on Mauna Kea as well? That the building of those telescopes did not damage, deface, disfigure, or mar the landscape, the original landscape of those areas?
I don't believe so, but I would like to know how the other 13 telescopes got up there.
Okay. Do you believe, again, if the TMT were to be built, would you agree that the actions that were needed to be taken in order to build this telescope would outrage the sensibilities of persons likely to observe or discover these actions? Too fast? Kalamai. Okay. I'll try again. If the TMT were to be built on Mauna Kea, would you agree that the actions that need to be completed in order to build this telescope would outrage the sensibilities of persons likely to observe or discover these actions?
Sorry, Your Honor, I don't understand the last portion of the question.
Hanaho.
He doesn't understand the last portion.
Yeah, so I'll try it one more time.
I'm not sure repeating it is going to make it clearer, so maybe you can...
One thing, maybe I gotta go a bit slower.
No, rephrase it so he can understand it.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to find another way to rephrase outrage the sensibilities. If the TMT were to be built, would this action of building the TMT on Mauna Kea create a sense of outrage within those who are likely to see these actions being done or to know of these actions being done?
Well, I would assume, as demonstrated by the protest, that a certain segment of the population, both Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian, would be outraged.
Mahalo. Are you familiar or have you ever heard of Hawaii Revised Statute 711-1107?
No.
Okay, mahalo. Okay, so we're gonna ho'omaku page 3, your written testimony. You state that the ultimate job of humanity, o kalamai, this is towards the middle of the middle paragraph. Mm-hmm. The ultimate job of humanity must be to ensure that our planet lives a full and fruitful life. Polole Kea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Polole.
are you also aware that the current master lease for Mauna Kea expires in 2033?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And are you also aware that under the terms of this lease, were it not to be extended, that telescopes would need to be decommissioned prior to the expiration of the lease?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, mahalo. So, with this being said, taking into consideration the amount of time that would be needed to build TMT and the amount of time needed to deconstruct TMT, assuming that it is not extended, the master lease, and I believe it's safe to assume that at this point because it has not been, do you have knowledge to believe that within this time, TMT will ensure that our planet lives a full and fruitful life?
Well, it's, again, cause for me to speculate. I believe that the telescope will contribute to the endeavor of sustaining life on this planet.
May I ask how you believe that or why you believe that? Because my question was, do you have knowledge to believe that within this time frame, TMT will ensure that our planet lives a full and fruitful life? So I guess my question is, what knowledge do you have that would lead you to that?
Well, I believe that scientific research is important for all humanity. Given whether it's a limited time frame, anything that you can learn that can help the survival of planet Earth, I believe is benefit. So whether it's a few years or whether it's longer than that, I believe that the effort is worth. I believe that the effort is worth for humanity's sake. So it's a worthwhile effort for humanity's sake.
Okay. Excluding all external factors, do you believe the TMT itself, the structure, the telescope, and again, excluding all other factors, so just looking at this telescope and the structure, do you believe, and do you have knowledge to believe, I guess, that this telescope within 9 years is going to take us to I'm not sure, a couple years that they would have to utilize this telescope? Do you think the TMT itself, the structure, would ensure that our planet lives a full and fruitful life, again, excluding all other factors?
I believe they would contribute to that effort.
So it'd be safe to say that you also believe TMT could contribute to this effort, even if it were not to be placed on Mauna Kea? Okay. It would be safe to say that TMT would still contribute towards this effort, even if it were not to be placed on Mauna Kea?
Yes, I believe that's an accurate statement.
Mahalo. Okay, I got a couple more questions left, and then that's it. I noticed, and you made reference earlier today in your testimony, that parts of your testimony come from a newspaper article written to the West Hawaii Today. Is that correct?
Yeah, this testimony in context is taken to a submittal.
Okay. Now, I've gone ahead and reviewed your two testimonies between the contested case that was held before this as well as this one now. Yeah. And I've also referenced your newspaper article. And I noticed that your written testimony of today, or of this contested case hearing, is very, very similar to your written testimony of 2011. Would you say that this is true?
Sorry, 2011, can you identify that?
The contested,
that event?
The first contested case.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I've edited it, but I kept the context of it pretty accurate.
Generally speaking, it's
yeah,
near identical almost.
Yeah.
In context.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you've already answered these questions, but just to be clear, are you aware of the historical events that took place on Mauna Kea between March and December of 2015?
Yes, I was following it on the internet.
Can you just briefly explain what these events were?
I'm sorry, didn't hear that.
Sorry. Can you briefly explain what these events were?
Well, it was just one event. It was a protest.
Okay. And that's all you wish to say about it? It was a protest.
My evaluation of it, it was a protest and not. I know there are different people were raising different issues within the context of a protest, but basically it was a protest.
Okay. Would you call these events a time of unity?
I'm not sure if it was a time of unity. I know there was much discourse about the content of the protest.
Would you consider this point in time to be a reawakening, I guess, culturally, spiritually, for many Hawaiian people?
I believe so.
Can you recall a point in time in Hawaiian history where perhaps such a cultural reawakening and spiritual reawakening took place?
Oh yes, I believe in the 1970s there was a trifecta of events historically that garnered a lot of Hawaiian attention.
What were some of those events?
Kaho'olawe, and again, I was a young teen at that time. The initiative to protect and grow the Hawaiian language, Kalama Valley, and the Hokulea.
I recall. Would you say that you've been positively impacted by that time and those events?
It shaped my awareness.
And would you agree that it's shaped the awareness of not just yourself, but the Hawaiian community at large? And I don't mean every single person, but again, generally speaking, the Hawaiian community at large.
In my own ohana, it created a large debate. My grandfather was a retired military. He was in charge of the National Guard, and he had administration for the military reserve on Maui. So I used to talk with him a lot about the need to bomb Kaho'olawe, and just so we're clear that even though he was a military person, he was against the bombing of Kaho'olawe.
Mahalo. Do you believe that the events of March through December of 2015, maybe not, well, at this point in time, could we classify it as being similar to the events and having similar impacts to the impacts that events of the 1970s that you referred to would have had or have had?
Well, this is a discussion, and just let me say that it had tremendous impacts, not because it stopped TMT, but because it shook the confidence of the 13 other telescopes, and that's, for me, the real issue. It's, okay, I want to repeat my answer. So, again, like I said, it had, in my opinion, it had a major impact, not because of the fact that it stopped the TMT, but rather that it shook the confidence of the 13 other telescopes on the mountain.
Would you agree, and I apologize if this has been answered clearly already, would you agree that the TMT issue, again, and looking at the events between March and December of 2015, created, okay, you've already stated that those events have created a cultural and spiritual reawakening of some kind.
I agree.
Okay. Do you believe, and again, and this spiritual and cultural awakening came about through the issue of building or not building TMT on Mauna Kea?
Well, it brought a focus to the building of the TMT.
Okay. Do you believe that the building of the TMT would have any impact on those who have opposed it from the beginning and also those who have been culturally sorry, Kalame. Do you believe that the building of the TMT would impact those who have opposed the building of the TMT on Mauna Kea from the beginning, as well as those who have been culturally and spiritually reawakened during that time? Do you believe they will be negatively impacted by the building of the TMT if it is indeed to be built?
No, I don't feel they'll be negatively impacted.
Are you aware of the arrests that took place on Mauna Kea between March and December of 2015?
Yes, I am.
And are you aware that these arrests occurred due to the fact that TMT and its affiliates were attempting to build on Mauna Kea?
Yeah, I believe it's a process of civil disobedience.
Okay. Do you believe that the building of the TMT on Mauna Kea is worth, and I won't throw a number there because, again, that calls for speculation, I guess. So do you believe that the building of the TMT is worth many Hawaiians and non-Hawaiians alike getting arrested to protect their sacred Mauna?
I believe that people have to stand up for what they believe in. So I believe that if they are arrested, then it's part of the process.
Are you aware of the situation taking place in Standing Rock, North Dakota at this time?
Yes, I am.
Objection, irrelevant, Your
I'm
Honor.
going to overrule. Go ahead.
Are you aware of the
But, Mr.
situation?
I'm going to ask you to
Slow down.
kind of slow down,
Kalame.
but wind up.
Slow down,
You're
but
questioning.
Okay. Are you aware of the events and the situation taking place as we speak at Standing Rock, North Dakota?
Okay, I'm going to answer. Yes, I am aware of the protests.
Taking place there.
Yeah, against building the pipeline on private land because it's going to affect adjacent Indian lands and their waters.
Mahalo. Do you believe the building of the TMT is worth bringing a Standing Rock-like situation here to Hawaii?
Again, are you asking me to compare Standing Rock to TMT? I'm sorry.
I'm just asking if building the TMT is worth bringing a situation like what's taking place in Standing Rock to Hawaii.
I don't know how to compare. Standing Rock is a separate issue. from
Whatever you
TMT.
know of that's taking place at Standing Rock at this point in time, is the building of TMT in Hawaii worth bringing whatever knowledge it is that you have of that place and that situation here to Hawaii?
Yes, I think it is.
I think it is worth it.
Yes, I think it is.
Do you think the people of Hawaii will simply stand to the side because the BLNR grants a CDUP one more time?
Well, I believe there'll be opposition to it, and I believe there'll be proponents for it. So,
And do you believe all people have a right to determine for themselves their sacred sites,
absolutely.
Hawaiians included?
Oh, absolutely.
And do you believe all people have a right to determine for themselves the treatment of their sacred sites,
Absolutely.
Hawaiians included?
Absolutely.
Do you believe Hawaiians have a right to protect their sacred sites from foreign multinational corporations? Do you believe Hawaiians have a right to protect their sacred sites from foreign multinational corporations who wish to desecrate it in exchange for corporate profit?
I cannot answer that question. Calls for me to conclude that foreign national corporations are going to desecrate someplace.
Do you believe Hawaiians have a right to protect their sacred sites?
Yes, I do.
Do you believe Hawaiians have a right to protect their sacred sites in the manner which they see fit?
Absolutely.
Okay, I think I have one or two more questions. I'm going to refer to a statement you made in a earlier cross-examination. This one, I believe it was with Auntie Pua case. She asked you the question about Papa Mau using telescope-like, Western-like instruments on the canoe. And you mentioned that he had never used those on the canoe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And in referencing why, you made a reference towards limited space. Okay. Are you familiar with the, I'm sure you are, probably way better than I am, familiar with the term Hemoku he va'a he va'a hemoku?
Yes.
You want to spell that out or write it out for me?
During the recess.
Yeah, those are common Hawaiian words.
Yeah. What does that mean?
An island is a canoe. A canoe is an island. It means to, in my interpretation of it, is if you treat the model of sustainability and recognize that our kupuna ancestors had a process for stewardship on board the canoe, and if you transfer that to island living, you should be able to sustain a community.
And so the limited space that the canoe provides is very similar to the limited space that our islands provide us.
Yes.
Okay, last question. Would the TMT, if built, finally be able to locate a treaty of annexation legally and lawfully ceding the Kingdom of Hawaii to the United States of America?
Could you repeat the question, please?
I'm all Paul. Mahalo.
Slowly. I'm going to ask that we keep this down to civil proceeding. I have been hearing comments during questions. This is not a circus, folks. We're trying to give respect to everybody, and I'm going to ask that please be in place. I'm directing my attention particularly to the observers.